30 years ago, we never would have imagined being here talking about this. We went from childhood games to energetic alignment. By doing the work, we created better versions of ourselves. Join us, two women sharing their intimate journal entries on their path to consciousness. Get in here, get in here, get in here. If you like our content and you want to hear more, subscribe, like, and comment below.
Numerology. I used to think that reading my horoscope and decoding the numbers and my birth date would somehow cheat me out of discovering things about myself for myself. But the insight it provided became fun and inspiring. So here's what I learned. I'm a life path 1 and I'm a natural born leader. I'm independent and I like figuring things out by myself. I'm a bit self-centered and impatient, but I'm also passionate about the things that matter the most to me. And I'm always going to figure out a solution to my problems.
1234, 1111, 420, and 88. Those were the first numbers I remember seeing repeatedly. I didn't understand it then, but I felt like it meant something. First, it was a coincidence. Then it was a sign of luck. Now I know it's a message. Get in here, get in here, get in here, y'all, and welcome back to our episode about all things numbers. It is all about numerology today.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I feel like when I was reading my journal entry, I was like on a dating show. I was like,
Right.
this is what you need to know about me.
Yes. It was very much contestant number 1.
Right?
She's a natural born leader. She's a bit conceited, but she's still looking for love. Are you the bachelor for her? Yeah. That is very much
It's
fun.
so, but that's what numerology and like horoscopes and stuff, they're just so much fun. And that's what I love about this episode.
Back in the day, we would turn to like Cosmo magazine and turn to the horoscopes and to figure out what that meant for you for that month.
Yes.
And I remember it always being very exciting. And I also remember reading like love horoscopes when we was like teenagers, like we knew what that meant. But anyway, it is something. I think horoscopes, I think people have always been like, oh, okay, well, let's just see. But when you talk about numerology, I think people don't know as much about it. I think now more, obviously, it's a little bit more prominent and people are like, oh, like you said, you're a life path 1. Like, when did you first learn about life path and like what that meant for you?
It was fairly recent. I think on this journey and why I thought it was a good idea to do numerology as well, because we're trying to open up to ourselves and learn more about ourselves. And I just feel like numerology and understanding ancient numbers and ancient math, all of that stuff kind of ties into your DNA, like your just who you are. And so I just started researching it maybe like a year ago. And I just when I started reading, up on myself and this is what you are, or this is, your this is what you like. It was more so like this is exciting. And I wanted to kind of, pull in on my strengths that it was telling me and just, and then also work on my weaknesses that it was telling me. So for me, it was just more about getting in tune with myself and like tapping into kind of who I am and, doing something about that.
Yeah, it's kind of like a guide.
Right.
I remember I guess it's been, so when I remember first started seeing those repeated numbers, the first one I ever remember was 1234. I remember I would see that and 420, which was my birthday. So I was like, 420 made sense. I was like, oh, that's me. That makes sense. But I would see 1234 all the time. And I was like, I didn't remember what it, wow, I just like, oh, that's cool. I keep seeing 1234. And then eventually, like I said, it was coincidence. And then it felt like luck. And now when I say it's a message, so when I see 1234, that means things are lining up exactly as they're supposed to be, or I am aligned. So when I see it, it reminds me, it's a reminder that like, Z, you're on the right path. You're doing the things that you need to do in order to find your dharma, which is like your purpose, right? And so now that's why I see them as a message, like 444. Whenever I see that one, I see 222 a lot now. And it really depends on where I am in my life, which numbers I see repeatedly. when I found this house, I remember thinking like, oh, this is a good house because it was 11. And, 11 is a master number.
Mhm.
And then when I was looking up things about 11, the number 11, and when I actually specifically looked up things about the number of 11 according to where you live, and it said things like it is where you carve out your peace, it is where you create your sanctuary. And, very much, I have carved out this little space for me in this
Yes, you
home right
have.
now. And I was like, oh, this seems very true and very real.
Yeah.
Um, and then I guess, if you have skeptics that are like, it's a number, what does it mean? But the thing that I always like to tell people, or the example that I give is, according to when you were born, the time of day and where you were actually born, the planets and the stars are all aligned differently. And according to that, like when they're asking you to put together your life path, or if you're trying to figure out like your numerology and all that means in your astrology, they want you to be as precise as they can about the time that you were born, the
Mhm.
city that you were born in, because that will all affect how your reading goes, because it depends on exactly where the planets were lined up. And so if
Yeah.
that's if you could, something as simple as 10 minutes apart in the same city could totally change personality traits based on how the planets had moved in 10 minutes, makes you think, one, that feels very magical,
Right.
very spiritual. And then again, like, there's more to this. And then when
Yeah.
you read about it, if you actually do one and you find one who is like good, or if you do, you could do them online now too. But if you do your precise number, I've never seen anyone do it and say like, that has nothing to do with me. I don't see those
Right.
instances of me. So yeah, I think finding your life path is important, which is fairly easy. All you have to do is line up your birth date. So you look at your birth month, your date, and then the year, and then you add all those numbers up until you get to one number. So if you add it up, for me, it's April 20th, and then my year, I add it all up, and maybe I get like, let's say I get 88. I still have to simplify that again to 16. I still need to simplify 16 down to 7, which would be a life path number. So it's that idea. The only ones that you don't simplify are master numbers, which is 11, 22, and 33. Like those
Mhm.
you keep if you have a double number. Everything else you want to multiply, or you want to simplify down to a single digit. So
Yeah.
again, that's just one way that you can figure out your life path, and then just Google it. The rest you can figure it out. Chat GPT can help you out. We're talking about AI, which also, we go on a whole tangent on AI and science and
Not
spirituality
today.
and all
Not
that. But
today.
AI, in the instance, if you want to put and find some stuff out about like horoscopes or astrology, use AI. I promise you, it can give you some good tips.
Yeah. No, I remember seeing the number 1105 a lot
Hmm.
early on. And that's my mother's birthday, November 5th.
Okay.
So I always associate it with her. And then I went to look up the time that I was born because I had to figure that out for something. And I was actually born at 1105. So I was
Mm.
like, oh, okay, little mixed usage here. But, that's what kind of makes it fun. And then, like I said, when I read the things about myself, I was like, ooh, that sums me up to a T. Like, that's me. And then that also makes it fun and exciting and believable, right? Because everybody wants to be able to believe
Hmm.
some of these spiritual things are really in existence. But I mean, I believe it because I also associate it with like ancient mathematics. Like it really
Hmm.
is like
Sacred
facts.
geometry. Hmm.
Yes,
Hmm.
like this stuff is true. So to kind of, like shun it off just because, you think it's kind of magical or dark
Woo
magic or
woo.
something like
Hmm.
that. Yeah, it's like no, find out who actually came up with, mathematics. Find out, geometry. Like go back and you'll see that these people, these philosophers and mathematicians were actually using this and creating this for a purpose. And so with that, it's like easy to believe.
Yeah. Again, if you don't believe it, then you don't believe it. So there's no sense in you trying to, even like look into this. But like if you're curious and you want to know more about your personality, it can tell you your strengths for like where you should be focusing or how you should be focusing or where you would excel in
Yeah.
like work versus love life versus friendship. I remember the first
Yes.
person I spoke to that really like resonated with me was an Eastern astrologer. I spoke to him back in, it's probably like 2009. And I subsequently ended up speaking to him 3 times total over the course of 6 years. So I would speak to him like every 2 years. And I remember the first time we spoke, it was before I had kids. And I remember he saying, hey, kids are in your near future. And at that point, I was like, I'm really focused on my career. I wasn't really thinking about it. And he was like, well, I'm just letting you know this is what I see. He was like, I see them. He was like, they're definitely girls. He was like, he gave me their personality traits, and like to go back and listen to it and be like, oh my gosh, in 2009, this man prophesied to me who my children were going to be. And they very much are that.
Hmm.
And then I spoke to him after that. And maybe it was a third time. Yeah, it was a third time I spoke to him. He was like, oh, so what do you want to talk about? And I was like, my marriage. And he was like, listen, basically, he was like, I saw that the first time that we spoke. When you were married before kids, I knew that there was going to be an issue with your marriage. He was like, but it would have never served you to know that 6 years ago, the way it now has served you. And that made a lot of sense to me of like, it wasn't that he was holding back information. So
Yeah.
anyway, when I go back and listen to them now, they really do feel very like prophetic in the sense of almost everything he said is very much come to fruition in my life.
Yeah. That's great. Like, so when you were talking to him, did you get a sense of genuineness, or you were like, oh, okay, you do this for a living, like these numbers down pack, or did you, like, you know what I mean? Because I think some
So
people have that perception, like, oh, I'm not really into that because these are just kind of like dark magic people. Like,
right,
how did
right.
you feel about him in particular?
So he came via referral and from my sister. My sister
Oh,
had
okay.
actually spoken to him first, and she was like, "Oh, Z, you should talk to him." And so she told me her reading, and he was like, "Oh, okay." He was like, "I can see where you and your sister's charts kind of like there are parts of your charts that are alike." And he was like, "So this is where you guys are alike." He was like, "But you're also very different." And he tailored it very much to me. Like my reading was different from hers, and what he
Hmm.
said. And like, so I took it all as word is bond kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
nothing about it made me go like, that doesn't sound like me. Obviously, I didn't know that I was going to have I didn't know if that was true, or like if I was going to have like that these kids were coming soon and all that. But I just kind
Right.
of like listened. I felt like it was like guidance, right? And
Hmm.
this was guidance because again, it was Eastern astrology where he is like, I am really relying on the planets to say to look at your birth chart. This has nothing to do with anything else other than the time that you were born and the place that you were born, right?
Yeah.
And so that made sense to me, and it still holds true when I go back and I look at things according to my birth chart. And I always can use it now like a guide, the same way I use intuition, the same way you use spirit or your ancestors. I feel like it's just another tool that we have in our access that can help us develop this a higher relationship with our higher self, because I think
Hmm.
that's ultimately what it is. And if you think about it, if you're looking at the stars and the planets and how they align, and based on their energy it has now impacted your personality, that again feels like a spiritual experience. And like,
Yeah.
how do I use that to help myself grow? And so
Yeah.
like, it gives you your strength, it gives you your weaknesses, how, what you should be looking for in a partner, what kind of like job you would excel in. So I think it's a tool that we have access to that people maybe don't utilize as much as they should.
Hmm. Now, I was asking that because for me, I like women priestesses. you know,
Okay.
uh, and just that's just my preference. I remember when I went to Bali, and so my sister and we went to talk to a shaman, and there was like three different rituals that they kind of put you through. And the first ritual was like Reiki work. They were doing energy work. We laid down on our backs, and they did something to us. Like they just put hands on us, not really, but it was a man. And so I was thinking, I was like, oh, I hope he doesn't, do my reading as well. So I just sat there and I was just like praying that it wasn't him. Like I couldn't get into like I don't know what it was. I just wanted a woman. And I
Mm.
sat there and I prayed about it while he was, laying hands on us. I was just like, please just do this first part. And so we were about to start the second part and he was about to start doing my reading. And I was like, and then all of a sudden he was like, "Oh, actually, you gonna go over here." And then I looked to my left and it was a woman. And I was like, "Oh, thank you, Lord." Because
Somebody was listening. Mhm.
right, I just have a connection with women
Mm.
more so than men when it comes to those type of things, only because I feel like, um, I don't know, I just feel like women do it better.
You
I
probably
don't
feel
have an
like you
answer.
resonate. You
I
probably resonate, and you're
do.
probably more in your feminine energy right now, which would make sense. I think both of us have been in our masculine energy for a long time, and
Well,
part of our
that's what she told
spirituality is
me.
learning how to integrate our feminine energy with our
Yes.
masculine energy. And so that might be why you are resonating more with feminine energy right now, which makes total sense.
Yeah.
But that reminded me because on my honeymoon, I also went to Bali and I actually met with Katut from Eat, Pray, Love. We went
Oh,
and
yeah, you
he
did tell
did
me that.
like a palm reading for me. And some of it felt very much, not that it wasn't not that it wasn't exciting or fun because it was like, "Oh my gosh, I read about you in a book 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and now I'm actually here talking to you." His felt very high level. Like, "Oh, you're gonna be
Mm.
very successful and you're very like." I can't even remember everything he said, but I just remember being like, "Oh, okay, that was cool." More so for the experience to say I got to meet Katut, who has since unfortunately passed away, but I also remember being in Bali, which I think Bali is very special,
It is.
spiritually, right?
Mhm.
And we were in Ubud, and I remember stopping in a mystical store where I got these CDs. Now that's also telling you how long ago I got married because CDs were a thing. But I bought a CD for that you were supposed to listen to overnight that was frequency music. And that was the
Okay.
first time, and it had affirmations and all this stuff. But that was the first time I remember being like, oh, I'm willing to try anything. I think it was
Yeah.
like around abundance or something like that that I had picked up. But there was just something very magical about Bali. So it's definitely a trip that I say that everyone should take. I know it has changed a lot and has become a little bit more commercial, just with anything with popularity as it grows. But I
Yeah.
still think there's something special about the actual land and the people in
Mhm.
Bali.
Yeah. No, it was very special and magical, and spiritual for me, in
So
my
wait, would you
experience.
mind sharing a little bit more about like your actual reading? Like, so when he had the woman, like, oh, okay, maybe not. That's fine. Maybe you don't want to, and that is totally cool. Okay, I got that.
No, I'll give you a little taste.
Yes, by all means. By no means do we want you to share more than, because this is for everybody.
It's so but I'll tell you this because you kinda brought it up when you were like, we have this masculine energy that we can't get rid of, and that's what she told me. She was like, "In my past life, I was a man," right? She was like,
Mhm.
You were a man, you were a leader of your community. Everyone, looked up to you." Um, that leader part of being a life path one, everyone looked up to you, and I had a lot of women, baby. I was a
You were a womanizer?
player. I was
You were a womanizer?
a player. And so
Oh.
she told me that, well, I don't know if I was a womanizer. Like, you taking it too far.
Isn't a player a womanizer though? A man who's playing multiple women? What
I mean, I don't know. Anyway, so she told me, she was
is a
like,
player?
so you had, your wife, because I was a player. Your wife was like so in love with you, and you couldn't see past all this other stuff that you were doing, but in this life, that's one of the things that you need to bring in balance. You need to love um, more in this lifetime. You need to, appreciate the people that are in your life, and just kind of balance out that karma, because that was one thing that I did wrong in the past life. So I remember hearing that, and I was like, "Oh, I totally see it." Right? Like,
Mm,
and then I also felt like I seen it in men in my life, in this life, right? And
mm.
so I was like, "Ooh, it's hitting so many factors." For me. And so that's one of the things that I'll share. The other things, I mean, she was on the nose about everything, and that's why I feel like, women, I could believe her more. Like, if I had a man telling me, sitting me there telling me I was a man, I would just be like, "Sir,
Self-serving. Yeah. Yeah. No, I
right?"
no, 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 no. I totally get that.
You know.
I remember when I spoke to the guy, the Eastern astrologer, the first time I spoke to him, he was like, "You have integrated your feminine energy really well." He was like, "But it's because your last he was like, "Your past few lives, you have always been a woman." He was like, "Your goal in this lifetime," which is really what I think I have done in the last 5 years, was to integrate your
Mm,
masculine energy. So that meant, and he said to me, he goes, all of your life lessons come from men. And girl, if that ain't been the truth, okay?
right.
But even from my father to the men in my family to the men that I chose to date to men that I have platonic relationships with, I so see it how they are how I learn my lessons.
Yeah.
Um, but so in the last 5 years, learning how to integrate my masculinity was learning to speak up for myself,
Mm,
learning to say no. If I didn't want to do something, be like, nah, I ain't gonna do it. Because
yeah.
before, the feminine energy in me wanted to make and please others.
Sure.
I had to learn how to please myself first, which you really
Mhm.
think is like male energy, like it's about me and then whatever comes after that, right?
Yeah.
So I had to learn how to integrate that energy and, in a sense, like boss up. Right? And when I did that, my entire life leveled up. That's how I
Mm,
was able to get a divorce, because I finally was like, enough is enough. Like, I
yeah.
can't do this anymore. The same thing with my career, where I felt like stuck for a while, like I'm just not progressing. All of a sudden, when I chose me first and put myself first, my career advanced.
Yes.
And so it's the same idea. My finances increased, all of these things. So I think there is something to it, of this duality of learning how to integrate both your masculine and feminine energy. And this is for male and females. Like, everyone needs to know how to integrate both of those energies. And
Mhm.
so, and as I think about like the man that I want to attract, I say I want a divine masculine, but that divine masculine man is also vulnerable, emotionally vulnerable, and open, because he also will have to have that feminine qualities. And by no means does that make him less heterosexual,
Right.
because he knows how to
Right.
identify with his emotions. But when you think about society, we have told men who are emotionally available and vulnerable that they are not men, right? And
Mhm.
so I think that's why men have a hard time expressing their emotions, because society has told us, in order to be a man, you got to be a man's man, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
if you cry, you're no longer a man's man. Well, you know what? I want a man that feels safe enough to cry in front of me, and to know at the same time that I'm not going to be like, "Ooh, that was a little
Right.
pussy." No, you know what
Right.
I'm saying? Like, I want you to be vulnerable. I want you to be okay. At least, and if you go out in the world and you a man's man, hey, I love it. I
Yeah.
want to see that. Like, be the man.
Absolutely.
But when we're at
Yeah.
home and we're in a safe space, I want you to be able to trust me. And I'm gonna need you to trust me to be able to let that guard down and show some of that feminine energy, because I think it'll help our bond grow.
Mhm.
So anyway, but yeah, so I feel like we're talking about numerology, but we're also just talking about spirituality at this point, and
But
just
that's what
energies.
that's what it does. Like, it helps you see those things about yourself that you need to heighten, like that you need to, push towards instead of running from, right? So like, I'm told I was a man in the past life and I had all of this masculine energy, right? Like, I need to understand that, okay, well, now it's time to push forward to your feminine energy, be a little
Yeah.
bit more softer. So those are the things that I've taken from numerology, to just help myself. And then you also mentioned like angel numbers earlier. So,
Mhm.
like when you see those angel numbers like 1111 and 444, what are some things that what do you do in that moment? I mean, I know what I do, but I don't know if it's right or if it's wrong or like,
So right off the bat, I don't think there's a right or wrong thing because
okay,
it really is personal to you. So
yeah.
like I said, when I used to see 1234, I knew that I meant that meant for me alignment. That's the same way I feel about 1111 means, ooh, you're on the right path. But if I see the number and it's not like associated with the clock, or if I see it on like a license plate or something like that, it's a message for me. In some cases, I would quickly Google what does 444 mean, right?
Mm,
And so now I ask spirit, what does that mean for me? And
okay.
whatever comes in my head. So sometimes it's whatever I was just thinking. Tune into what you were just thinking or whatever you were just doing when you saw that. And then either you can Google it, you can ask your spirit, like, what does this mean? What message is this for me? And then like move from there. Because I think starting out in the beginning, I would always Google. And like I said, eventually I started to just, there became this like knowing.
Mhm.
I know what I know and I know what I know.
Yeah.
And I don't question it and I don't doubt it. That's why I say for you, there's no wrong or right way you can look at anything because however you look at it is true for you.
Yeah.
But what do you do? Because I'm just interested to hear now.
Well, it's very simple. I'm a very
Mhm,
simple child. I just thank God. I thank
mhm,
God for the awareness. Like, thank you for putting this to my attention. I don't know if I take it a step further and ask, like, what is the meaning?
mhm,
It's just thank you. Thank you for, I know this means something. I know, you know what I mean? But in this moment, because I'm just sitting here looking at the clock and I really don't remember thinking about anything in per
mhm.
se. So I just say thank you. I give gratitude in those moments.
I think that's excellent because
Oh,
especially if nothing else for you to say that you were aware. Be like, "Thank you for the
uh,
awareness that I'm aware of what's happening right now." And that's more than enough. And like, thank
yeah.
you and gratitude because more of that will continue to come up and show in your life.
Yeah.
So you actually pick this week's quote for this episode. So I'm going to pull it up and then we can talk about it cuz I'm going to let you read it and then tell us what you were thinking.
Okay. So this one comes from Pythagoras, which is a Greek philosopher, an ancient Greek philosopher. And it says, just as music follows a hidden rhythm of numbers, so does life. When we understand the patterns, we find harmony in the chaos. And I thought that it was just beautifully said, talking about numbers and about patterns, because, that's kind of what the angel numbers are as well, like patterns. Um, and so you finding harmony, right? So I'm giving gratitude when I see angel numbers, and you're finding alignment when you see certain angel numbers. So when I saw this, I was like, okay, these are type of things that we probably already incorporate when we see patterns or numbers that mean something to us. So that's why I
Yeah,
picked it.
what I love about this is especially the last part and finding harmony in the chaos. Because I think when we look at our world and seeing what's happening, it feels very chaotic and it
Mm,
can feel scary and just like this unknown of like, what is about to happen? Am I going to be safe? And I think when we think about spirituality as a whole, that really is the harmony in the chaos. When you can come back to center and know who you are, know that there are higher powers working in your life, right? You can look above what looks like chaos in your world to know that you are safe and that you are okay. And if you can get a
mm,
little message from a number here and there, I think it's another little way to like just, you'll be okay.
yeah.
I promise you, you'll be okay. And I really think, again, I always say healing is a big part of it. But yes, um, look within or look into your environment, see what you see that are giving you little messages. Just as we hope we've given you some today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and
Yes.
we will see you next week. Peace, y'all. Until next time, get in here, get in here, get in here.